Hello, everybody. I am George Counnas.
And I'm Carolyn Counnas.
Welcome to our Zesto audio facility in Thousand Oaks, California. Right as the lockdown started, we grabbed a bunch of inventory to have over here, so that we could ship from here if we needed to. And we have, actually, we've been able to ship.
A few are actually doing really well. The one beautiful thing about high-end audio is people have to stay home to listen to it. So you do get, some of the dealers are busy, selling whatever it is that, these guys get bored quick.
There was an opportunity to upgrade the preamp, this Lido Ultra. This is the third iteration, if you like, from the original. And the difference is this, I'm using different tubes in here, 12DW7s as well as 12AU7s. And the 12DW7s are half an AX7 and half an AU7, because actually there's two parts to these tubes. Instead of adding another tube, I conserved and had only 4 tubes. And then that in itself changed the sound of the unit. All the knowledge from all the previous versions enabled this design to happen. Sonically speaking, the preamp sounds better, I think, than any of the others by far. And then on top of that, we decided to put some features in there that are they're useful. For instance, one of the big ones in here is called a presence control. What this does is reduces the high frequency stuff on the recording, regardless of the format.
I say it takes out the nasty bits. Like what happened was we'd sit there and we'd listen, and the better our system got, and our system's pretty good, the less the more often music wouldn't sound as good. So the better your system gets, some of your absolutely favorite music that you own doesn't sound that great. There is an enormous inconsistency in mastering. And what happens is, so as when you listen, some stuff can be really bright and edgy and others aren't. And so what this does is it doesn't add anything or take it.
It does take out.
It does take out, yeah. But it takes out, it allows you just to enjoy the music without it being nasty, really.
Yes. The problem becomes is, as your system gets more refined, what happens is that we found, it's not just with us, but with most people, the more refined the system is, the more of everything you hear. And the more of everything you hear, some of the best performances, the best recordings of the favorite music is almost unlistenable. I mean, you have to kind of grin and bear it to be able to listen to it, because it's bright and edgy usually. So the presence control is a 6-position rotary switch that is 0. It's not engaged. It's just not in the picture at all. Not in the circuit, disconnected. And then it goes -1, -2, and so on. And every time, it doesn't change the amount of cut that it does, but what frequency points. And it goes from 13 kilohertz all the way down to 1 kilohertz, which sounds like a lot, and you lose a lot. But when you use it, it's not. It's designed so that it isn't too aggressive, so that it actually it's a tool you can use, and something that we use all the time.
Yeah, all the Zesto gear is designed to be really user friendly. If you dial it back and it sounds better, hey, that's good. If you don't engage in it, it sounds better, that's great. But we don't really design things that are, you have to have all this math, and if it sounds right, go for it.
The other thing is it has 3 gain settings, 3, 6, and 9 dB gain, and 6 inputs, and 3 balanced and 3 single-ended. Now, it has mute and also a mono. Now, all this can be remotely controlled or manually controlled. So when you're sitting down and you're listening, you could adjust the amount of presence remotely. And that's really helpful because it's from the listening position, not from when you. But if you choose to, you could manually adjust everything. We started a company with phono stage, which is the Andros PS1, 10 years ago.
We started the company in the Great Recession. So it was started at a time of great adversity. And, and right now, people are facing probably more than they've ever faced before. So there'll be some phoenixes that fly out of this fire for sure. But we started with a phono stage, which 10 years ago, vinyl was not all that, it's not at all like it is now. And people looked at us like, are you nuts? We were at a time in our life where our whole life was changing. And we're just going to say, you know what? We're going to do something we're really good at. Like it took us 30 years to kind of become an overnight success because there's so many skills that you need to run an audio company. And had we been in our 20s, none of that would have happened. George was trained on tubes in college. Then I went to solid state. And then he was recording engineer, so he knows how everything should sound. You were in R&D, yeah, at Raytheon. Well, it was Decca Navigator, which is now Raytheon. And so he learned production there. I used to, in a past life, sold, I worked in the interior design office furniture business. So I had to deal with thousands and thousands of details on every project, plus deal with all the manufacturers. So George had an experience in manufacturing. I had experience in that. And together, it kind of, all the stars aligned. So it was really interesting at a time of really the Great Recession.
I do the electrical engineering, Carolyn does the industrial engineering. From an electrical point of view, I felt that the phono stage was one of the hardest things to build. So that's why I started it. I figured, well, if I could design a phono stage that I liked, then things will, as far as from an engineering point of view, things could continue here, and it would be a way to make this company work. That's kind of how it started, and that was our first iteration of that. Then, we've come out with a newer version of that, the Andros 1.2, which we are still currently being produced in production. Again, that was after making the first one, going through it and making, checking all the circuits, figuring out ways to make it sound better, to make it quieter, and so on. And so the Andros 1.2, which is an award-winning phono stage, it's very quiet. It has an MM and an MC input. It has loading. It has built-in step-up transformers. It has loading on the secondary of the transformers and uses four 12AX7s and has a single-ended in and balanced in and single-ended out. So then decided to make a top-of-the-line phono stage. For me, I like to have the controls in the front, personally. Some people do not and would prefer to have them hid. I wanted to design a phono stage that had the controls in the front. And then I realized that, and I was getting calls from clients saying, well, okay, I have 3 tone-arms. What do? I like the sound of your phono stage, but there's an MM and an MC input. Then what? So we designed the Andros tessera. Tessera in Greek means 4, which means really there are 4 inputs. There are 4 separate inputs, 2 MC inputs and 2 MM inputs. They're essentially the 2 stereo channels, not just the left and right. Each one has a left and right, but they're 2 separate. You switch between them, and had all the controls in the front. And I went, okay, well then let's go all out. Carolyn was like, oh yeah, if we're gonna do it, we may as well go for it. And so we went for like having 2 separate boxes because there was noisy part of a phono stage is actually the power supply. So we put the power supply in a separate box that with a 3-meter cable. So they essentially take all the noisiest things and get it away from the phono stage, which made it extremely quiet. Now, the Andros 1.2 is very quiet, but the Tessera is the quietest. I mean, it is amazingly quiet. The black levels are unbelievable. It has balanced out. The Andros 1.2 has single-ended out.
Yeah.
It uses 6 tubes instead of 4 tubes. It has 4 12AX7s and 2 12AU7s as drivers. So it's very different. And sonically, one of the biggest differences that Carolyn pointed out is actually the MC step-up transformers.
Yeah.
The ones in the Tessera are like some of the top of the line. They're more phase coherent, which means your stereo image, it's much more of a pinpoint than the Andros 1.2. I mean, the Andros 1.2 sounds great, but when you compare it to the Tessera, well, you could really hear the difference. And plus balanced out is quieter and so on. Once we got the Tessera out, some people were complaining that the cost was more than they wanted to spend because they really didn't have a need for 4 inputs. They only had 2 inputs, so why spend the money on the extra 2 inputs? I get it. Then the other part of it was they didn't want to look at all the controls because they have one cartridge, they set it up, and it was intimidating to look at all the controls. We decided to make something in between. So we took the designs. I took the electrical knowledge from the Tessera and made a smaller unit that's in between the Andros 1.2 and the Tessera. It's called the Deluxe. It has the same step-up transformers as the Tessera, so it has the same stereo kind of imaging. Actually, sonically, they're not very different at all. I mean, the Deluxe sounds, you could really difficult to tell the difference sonically. The Deluxe looks more like the Andros 1.2. It has a built-in power supply. The controls are in the back, but it does have balanced out, and it uses 2 12DW7s and 2 12AX7s. So it's sonically very different than the Andros 1.2. Much closer to the Tessera. Again, every time we design something, both from an industrial point of view or from an electrical, we have learned so much from building the rest. Plus, we listen to our customers to see what it is that they would like.
But the Deluxe was kind of designed after 10 years of building hundreds and hundreds of phonostages. The Deluxe was kind of born out of what George really wanted in a phonostage.
Essentially, just to summarize, the Andros 1.2 is good. The Deluxe is bad. The Andros Tessera is the best, and the Deluxe is in the middle.
Good, better, best.
Well, it's just something I wanted to do because I knew vinyl sounded better, and it wasn't like, I had a crystal ball that said, oh yeah, vinyl's going to take off, everything's going to be, amazing. This is the way to go.
Oh yes, we did. No.
It sounded better. And I knew that there was a weakness in the other phonostages that were out there. So my background is both electrical engineering and sound engineering. And from all the hours and hours and hours in the studio, I know how an instrument sounds, how the microphone sounds, how the board sounds, how it sounds off a tape, which is what we were using, and how it sounds when it's mastered. And I knew when listening to this vinyl that it was so off. And I realized it's just the phonostages are not really representing what's coming off the vinyl properly. So I thought I'd look into it and see if I could improve it, and I did.